Every leader has a story, but the most powerful ones aren't the polished versions you've seen in the headlines. I'm Lisa Jones, and welcome to the Leadership Story, where we talk about real women, real leadership, and real resilience. Now, before I start bringing you incredible conversations with amazing women from all walks of life, I wanted to share why this podcast exists, some of the things you can expect, and honestly, a little bit of my own leadership journey, which hasn't been a straight line from point A to point B. So let me share what's behind the leadership story. Starting this podcast literally was not on my bingo card. I speak to women, whether it's at conferences, through LinkedIn, after presentations that I do, even at parties or girls' night. And what's interesting is in these spaces, not only do we talk about overall life, whether they're children, culture, current events, but no matter what the circle of women that I'm with, we always end up talking about our careers. And some of the common themes that seem to resonate in all of these circles are things around starting our career without the traditional background and feeling like we had to prove ourselves every day. We even talk about leading teams through crisis while battling with our own self-doubt, or even feeling like we had to check a box in order to be considered for leadership positions. And during these conversations with someone I've connected with just recently, she was sharing her career story, and I shared strategies to be effective. And halfway through that conversation, she posed a question. She said, "So when you starting a podcast?" And that was the last thing on my mind. Actually, like I said, I had no idea or no reason to want to start a podcast. So I brushed that aside and said, it's not something I wanted to do. Again, something happened, and in a conversation with someone else, they said, so when you start a podcast, this is what you should talk about. And for some reason, that stuck with me. So this is how the Leadership Story podcast was created. I wanted to start a space where we can have honest conversations about real leadership and what it actually looks like. So for the podcast, I will introduce you to incredible women who have something powerful to share about leadership, and where we can talk about the stuff that happens behind the scenes and tackle the stuff we all deal with, but don't always talk openly about, such as our doubts, our challenges, the moments when we're figuring it out as we go. Now, some of the conversations that we'll have in the episodes will be very deep conversations, and others just might be me sharing practical tips or insights I've gathered from all these amazing women that I get to talk to. But I want to ensure that every single episode will be real. No perfect success stories with all the messy parts edited out. No pretending that leadership is easy or that any of us have it all figured out. These are stories that exemplify being resilient. Because one thing I believe is that the women who are going to lead us into the future aren't the ones who've never faced adversity. They are the ones who faced it and learned from it and become better leaders because of it. So I want to tell you just a little bit about my journey, because I think it explains why I'm so passionate about this. Now, I've been working in the resilience industry for over 17 years now. If you're unfamiliar with the industry, this is an industry that is made up of many disciplines, and just to name a few, you have business continuity, disaster recovery, you have risk management, crisis management, emergency management, just to name a few. And this is not a career that I actively sought to pursue. Apparently, this career chose me in a sense. Interesting enough, I wanted to be a physician. I had went to a s- a high school that offered healthcare specific classes, and it taught me or geared me towards a track of becoming a physician. I went away to college, and that first semester kicked my butt. It was so hard. The classes were huge, and yet I still tried to persevere to become a physician. And after 2 years of attempting to become a physician, the finances ran out and I had to come home. So at that point, there was some despair and I didn't quite understand what I would do. Eventually, I got married, and one of the first jobs that I had, I became an administrative assistant. And that's how I got introduced to my industry. So it's very interesting. I was asked to receive some training for a software that they use for business continuity planning, and I had no clue what business continuity was, let alone to learn a software. And on top of that, I kind of drew the short stick because the other admin at the time didn't have a car. Therefore, she couldn't go to the training. So, tag you're it, Lisa. You have a car. Also, you live closer to where the training was being offered. So, you were chosen. You are the next one to go attend this training. So I started to learn the software and I began paying attention to this thing called business continuity planning. And something about it began to click for me. It was interesting to build plans and put a program into place to help organizations recover from a disaster or from a disruptive event. And that's basically what business continuity is. We do planning and help organizations put things in place. So if there's an event, whether it's a hurricane or a technology outage or anything that may happen, what can the organization do to continue its business? So that curiosity really drove me to learn more about this industry of resilience. And not only did I start understanding the why behind what we were doing, apparently I was pretty good at it. And soon I was training others in my organization, not only on the software, but also in developing a business continuity program. Ultimately, I was promoted from administrative assistant to a business continuity administrator. And that was just huge for me because what that taught me was that although I didn't have the right degree or because I followed a traditional career path, I showed up, I learned and proved that I could do the work. And this also taught me that leadership isn't about your title or where you went to school. Because remember, again, I was an administrative assistant, and that title meant you push papers or you were being led by others. And in that role for business continuity, I had to train people and I had to guide them and get information and almost, in a sense, manage up to people who had titles way above my pay grade or different levels. So that was a very valuable lesson for me. It was about seeing what needs to be done and stepping up, even when it's not technically my job. So throughout my journey, I faced situations that tested everything I thought I knew about leadership. I remember during COVID-19, I was managing a resilience program for an organization. And I had to assist them in figuring out how to transition almost 65% of our employees to remote work almost overnight. Now, this organization at the time, if 30% of the organization worked from home, that was a lot because it was mostly a hands-on, had to be in a building type of work that the organization did. And yet there was still a large portion of the organization that had the capabilities, but had never done it before. So talk about pressure, talk about uncertainty. Talk about having to make decisions with incomplete information and lead teams through something none of us had ever experienced before. But you know what I realized at that time? All those years of building resilience program, all those exercises we would run, and all those what if scenarios we planned for, they had prepared me for that particular moment, not just technically, but as a leader. I learned that when everything is uncertain, your team doesn't need you to have all the answers. They need you to be calm, to be decisive with the information that you have, and communicate clearly about what you do know and what you're going to do to figure out what you don't know. And that was a very pivotal moment because there was so much misinformation. It was uncertain. And to be able to withstand that time was really invaluable to me. Now today, as I work with global organizations on their resilience strategies, I draw on every part of this journey. The administrative assistant who learned a new skill and became curious. The manager who learned to guide teams through uncertainty. And here's what I'm most passionate about now. I've become known as someone other women in our industry come to for career advice. Women approach me at conferences, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and want to talk about how to grow in this field. And what I keep hearing is this pattern. I don't know if I'm qualified for that next role, or I don't have the traditional background, or I'm not sure I belong in that room. And I think, are you kidding me? You're working in resilience. You're literally helping organizations prepare and recover from the most worst case scenarios. You're building programs that keeps jobs, keep services running, keep communities functioning when everything goes wrong. If that doesn't qualify you for leadership, I don't know what does. But I also understand that imposter syndrome piece. Even with all my experience, there are still moments when I wonder if I really belong in certain rooms. There have been times when I walk into a room and discredit myself of not being worthy of being there. But the difference now is that I've learned that those feelings don't disqualify me. They keep me humble, they keep me learning, and they help me connect with other women who are having the same doubts. And here's what I want you to understand. You are a leader. You might not have the title yet, but you're already doing the work. And if you work in any field where you had to adapt, overcome challenges, support others through difficult times, figure things out as you go, same thing. You're already demonstrating those qualities that make great leaders. The question isn't whether you're qualified. That's not the question at all. The question is, are you ready to own your expertise and step into the leadership role you were meant to have? So, why am I telling you all this? Because I want you to start thinking about your own story differently. Maybe you've been through something that you think makes you less than a leader. Maybe you're dealing with something right now that feels overwhelming. Maybe you're hiding parts of your experience because you're afraid that may make you look weak or unprofessional. I'm here to tell you that's not true. Your resilience, whether it comes from personal challenges, professional setbacks, or just the everyday experiences of being a woman in leadership, is your competitive advantage. The organizations that need leaders most are the ones facing uncertainty, change, or disruption. And who better to lead that than someone who's already proven they can navigate the unexpected and come out stronger? I want this podcast to help you see your experiences as an asset. I want you to hear from other women who've turned their challenges into leadership advantages. I want you to feel less alone in your journey and become the leader you're meant to be. Because here's what I know for sure. There are women out there who need to hear your story. There are teams who need your specific kind of leadership. There are problems that need your unique perspective to solve them. So, what's coming up in the leadership story? Over the coming episodes, we're going to hear from women across all industries. You'll hear from women at different stages in their careers, from rising stars to seasoned executives to allies who've supported them along the way. And I'll be sharing practical insights too, things you can actually use in your own leadership journey. Most importantly, I hope you'll start to see yourself in these stories. I hope you'll start to recognize your own strength and potentials in new ways. Now, before I wrap up, I just want to say something to you directly. First of all, I appreciate you taking the time out to listen to this episode, and I hope it resonated with you. If you're listening to this, chances are you're someone who cares about leadership. You are someone who wants to grow, who wants to make a difference, who's willing to do the work to become better. That already sets you apart. But I also know that leadership can feel lonely sometimes. It can feel overwhelming. There are days when you wonder if you're cut out for this, if you have what it takes. If anyone else feels as uncertain as you do, you're not alone, and you absolutely have what it takes. I want to hear from you. If something in this episode resonated with you, connect with me on Substack at The Leadership Story, where we dig deeper, share exclusive insights, and build a real community of women leaders. If you have a leadership story, whether it's about overcoming challenges, finding your authentic style, or supporting other women, I want to hear it. Maybe you can be a future guest on the show. And if you know another woman who needs to hear that her struggles can be her strengths, that her story matters, and that she belongs in leadership, please share this podcast with her. Subscribe to The Leadership Story wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please leave a review. It helps other women find these conversations. I'm Lisa Jones, here to help you discover the leadership story you are meant to tell. I'll see you next time.